Hello and welcome to the next video in the GateStorm series. In this video we're going to continue looking at gate generation. This time simple gates, examine how the logic functions work, talk about lane resets, and finally saving our preset for later recall. So the first thing we need to do is let's attach lane 5, which is now on output E, to a hi-hat. And we'll run that output of the hi-hat back into our group mix that we're using with Levitate. Give it some volume. Bring down the kick a little bit. Now, use the rotary encoder to go down and select the simple lane. We're going to hit the sequence button again. We're going to change the time base to be multiplied by 2. And then on the simple lanes, we have a clock density function. Right now it's set to 95%. We're going to set it down to 50%. This means that 50% of the time at multiplied by 2, it's going to generate a clock output. Now, the simple lanes are kind of mixed with the logic functions. So what you see right here is that lane 5 is set to go out this lane. But you can also instead override these lanes to use logic functions, and you can use the simple lanes as inputs and the complex lanes on either side of the logic functions. So let's set this up. Let's say we want a hi-hat every time the kick is not firing. So if we go up and look, we see that the kick will be off at these times. Those are the times we want to allow a hat to come through if it randomly chooses so. So what we'll do is down here we have source 1, invert 1, source 2, invert 2. So we want to use 5 for source 1 and we want to leave it normal. So let's go ahead and hit the logic button and we'll select and we know that we want 5 and not 1 when this is not going. So we already have 1 selected, but we'll go over and select invert 2. Now what you hear is that randomly a hat will happen in the spots where it's off. Now one thing to notice on this, we're at multiplied by 2 here and multiplied by 2 here, and both of our pulse widths are both set to 1/2. Logic happens with the width of the pulse width. So if we had maybe a very small pulse width here on the kick, once it went low, then the AND signal would actually allow the hi-hat to occur right after that switches. This is one way that you can generate swing type feels with logic. Now, as I said before, these inputs can be anything. So let's say we want to have lane 1 exclusive ORed with lane 2 and that coming out for E. So let's go ahead and select source 1. We'll switch that to 1. And source 2, we'll switch that to 2. And then invert 2 will turn off. And then we'll go to logic. And now the hi-hat is being generated on an exclusive OR of channel 1 and channel 2. As you can hear, it's a different pattern. So, as I've mentioned previously, these lane outputs don't always have to be 1 through 8. So let's say you would rather have your hi-hats listening to lane 2 and your pitch changes listening to lane 5, but you don't want to actually move the cables. So this is a little bit more of an advanced topic, but we'll go through this because these are some things that you can store in presets. So if I go up to lane 2 and I push the outputs button, and I know I want that to come out E, so I select E. So now the hi-hats are being driven by lane 2. Likewise, if I go down to lane 5, and I already have output mapping up, and I want that to come out B, I'm going to select B. And the reason I want to show you this is if we go back to the sequencer page, we'll go to logic. Now listen to the difference in these logic functions with the pitch changes. Very different. So in a future video, we're going to show that you can actually randomize these outputs, or you can rotate these outputs, all while leaving all the cables plugged in the same way. Now another thing we wanted to show is Template 1 has the resets set up to reset off the global trigger 2. The purpose for doing this is that when a patch loads, it's always going to start the presets from the beginning, wherever they are. Reverse will start from this side. So if I hit that, now they're going to be in time. So when you're making changes to settings and you want to re-trigger everything back to the same starting time, this is a good reason to leave this set up that way. And note, all resetting is still happening synced to the global clock. So the last thing we want to go over is saving our preset. So let's exit out of this. And we're going to go ahead and save this preset into Bank 3 Preset 1. So we're going to push the center button. We're going to select right preset only. Select right. Now we're going to select Bank 3 Preset 1, and we're going to pick right. Now since we saved into a different bank, it doesn't automatically switch. If we saved within Bank 1, it would have switched our patch to wherever we were. So we're going to go ahead and load up Bank 3 Preset 1. So push the encoder in again. Read preset and bank, hit read, and now we select Bank 3 Preset 1 and read. So, one final thing in this video, you may have noticed that you can write preset only or write both presets and globals. We haven't talked about global settings yet, but global settings are bank-specific settings that affect all presets in the bank. This includes CV settings for preset switching and rotation of the outputs. This also includes some bank-specific trigger settings as well. We will go over the global bank settings in a future video. Since we haven't made any changes to the global settings, using either of these write methods would have been okay here. So that covers the basics for gate generation and logic. In the next video, we're going to start looking at assigning CVs.